Welcome. This is the first video I've done back since our book launch back in Monday this week, and I thought I'd just go over some main points that people are asking about. I might do this as a quick series on each chapter and kind of go over my viewpoints and thoughts on compliance in pharmaceutical. So I hope you've got a copy of the book. If you have, you can kind of go through it, and if you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll endeavour to get back to you. So the first kind of things that we're going over, point that was raised about compliance is the quite heavy use of being a tick box exercise. Although compliance does obviously have very rigorous rules and regulations around what you can and can't do, there's also this, I would say, it's less of a multi-choice question and more of a explain your, like in a math exam, explain your working outs. It was to kind of pose more of a question on how do we take regulations that are out there and internal SOPs and create a very coherent set of rules that we can follow for an event, and how do we make sure that they're still complied with and that this information is simple enough to then pass down and pass to people. We all know the kind of the outcomes of an audit, and if you get caught on certain elements which could be over promotional or seen as bribery or any of those kind of key areas which we are more flagged in events, the consequences are obviously huge. It could hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds on compliance and even regulatory boards and associations kind of excluding a pharmaceutical company from that. So I think the first kind of chapter kind of heads towards that processes, showing the holes in obviously compliance itself, the grey areas, painting them and seeing where they are, but also really trying to give a good footing on how to find those and create a good rundown for an event. A key another point that was brought up was when we talk about agencies versus internal teams, and obviously hiring internal teams is incredibly important. Obviously you need to make sure that your legal teams are talking to your marketing teams and vice versa. If you have an event manager in-house as well, you need to be able to have all those communications, those comms, talking about the event itself and the compliance and regulations of whatever you're doing. If it's a product launch, making sure that it's factual. If it's talking to KOLs, it's obviously making sure that they don't see that you're over promoting and saying that you're the only item for this specific outcome. So I think with that, there's a lot of elements that you've got to make sure aligns with internal, which takes a lot of paperwork, and I think that's the thing you can't really shy away with. And I was alluding to with my thoughts in chapter 1. That you still need an agency. Running it completely internally would obviously have a massive amount of workload, and bringing in an agency is normally that kind of first port of call. Is a great call, we'll bring in an events agency. A lot of the time we call it the 2 versus 3 pillar disharmony, whereas a normal event agency would not be set up to handle compliance, or to look at compliance and understand how to jump the hoops and make sure it's all documented. Through writing that first chapter, I was trying to get my point across with making sure that there is a difference in between agencies and understanding how they process things, even down to how you communicate your presentations, for example. How do you get sign off? How do you get this, that and the other? And I think quite clearly it becomes evident, but it could be too late. So from day one, you want to have audit ready paperwork, and a good green flag with an agency would be that they, from the first day, as soon as you get your login details to their portal or whatever they have to communicate information to you, that they would have some sort of paperwork already uploaded, their kind of framework, even if it's just APPI and maybe local affiliate and all that kind of stuff, already documented and uploaded. I know this goes into other chapters. There's quite a lot of detail in affiliates and kind of local codes, but I think first chapter was kind of to steer the ship in the right direction, and kind of the harmony in between agencies and pharmaceutical companies, and how you can create that. In the opening paragraphs, I talk about the unseen trip hazards, and I call it chessboard in this particular. And I think to expound upon that, I would probably go to the more analogy that the chessboard's moving and you're just on a train and you're trying to still play the pieces. There's a lot of movement in the pharmaceutical industry, especially with MSL departments growing and fluctuating in the last 5 years. It's been a very interesting ride for a lot of pharma companies going from B2B to D2C. So it's in the broad brushstroke of things. I think the compliance world has kind of been lagging behind a lot, trying to find ways to adjust to the new normal, I would say, in a lot of this. AI is obviously going to push a lot of this around as well, as that becomes adopted internally, and then future onto external comms with reps. Another question was asked a lot was how do we have early warning systems for small little triggers that will spiral into bigger investigations or even internal audits. And it's difficult to say, especially with AI now coming onto the scene further, and how that works with humans in the pharma world, especially with our admin and documentation. We're at the thought at the moment where AI is great and we use it for tools, but it won't be the end of the road with anything that gets signed off. I still think that a lot of event compliance is down to the fact that it's not tick box. It's, for example, fair market value. How do you justify that? You have to go out and get different quotes, a different understanding of the level of the cost of that per area, and get your affiliate to kind of give you a nod and a point in the right direction as well, at the very least. So I think with all of that, it's really important to understand how this all gets glued together, with AI definitely being a big key topic at the moment. We are seeing a lot of people use it as their event management tool, which is causing quite a few issues. We've seen quite a few people make mistakes because they just thought, AI is strong enough now and clever enough, it'll figure it out, and it's just not the case. There's nuances in obviously how people say things, even just tonality changes or vocal changes will really change the stance of how a presentation's given. So I think with all that combined, it still has a massive amount of human element. Also, I think we're going to see content that's going to be almost impossible to differentiate in between human content and AI. I mean, this could be AI, for example. It's not. I'm sitting in front of a camera trying to bumble my words together. And with that, I think a lot of people are going to struggle with the constant mirage. I think people are going to struggle with the constant bombardment of AI videos looking very human, and will almost call for more events really in the pharma world because they want to trust and be able to build that trust. Videos are great, but I just don't think we're going to be there with a compliance standpoint. So I hope that helps answer that question. So the last set of questions was based on the last 50% of the chapter 1, which is based on like previous approvals and how can we save time by using previous approvals and kind of that stuff, but without tripping our own feet with just relying on the fact that it was passed. We all know the massive implications if we rely on yesterday's codes, that it obviously often changes, especially internal. That's very quick and almost monthly rollouts with those. And I think with if you want to use templates, they're great. They obviously save you a lot of time in terms of putting information onto a page or how you display information, especially if people are getting used to seeing things in certain ways. Definitely use a way of key encoding the differences in between rollouts of code, even if it's just major points, kind of labeling it at least 3 times, in the title section, going, these are the main key changes, here's a bullet point just to jog your memory, and then when you get into the more detail, highlight it in green or red and kind of go, this is the change this month, these are the changes that we're making, and then also reference why or even the positioning. So if it's like international or internal or an affiliate suggestion or even a case study in an audit that's been happening, it's really useful just to kind of have quick points, not only for that particular rollout, but in future rollouts, you want to then go back and kind of jog your memory, go, okay, cool, we did that on the last one, we did this one the last month. Okay, we can see the difference in between the months, we can have a good guesstimate on how it's going to be. And I guess the major issues will come around when internal release a new code 24 hours, 48 hours before an event and kind of go, we have to apply to this now because of an audit thing or something came up in a meeting with senior execs or whatever. So having those differentiated across all of your rollouts is I think is a key point for us. Really just trying to get to as many points as possible of why these things go wrong in different ways, but looking at the same problem, if that makes sense. Just the same problem, but just multiple angles at it. It's probably a better way of putting it. And I think it's important that each route of those is under scrutiny in an audit. Even though you're talking about the same thing, you still need to be able to give a good reasoning and understanding and reckoning for why you did these things, and not to rely that, oh, okay, cool, angle 1 is, definitely covered all of that stuff. You still need to cover 2, 3, and 4. Maybe in different departments or even the same department, you still need to be able to make sure that the difference is covered at least. But then I would go even as far to say that you want to cover the whole thing multiple times. And that's kind of, again, why in the earlier parts of the chapter I was kind of going down this thought process of why agencies and teams need to really, really be on point all the time. And it's probably a whole nother conversation and video about your team and how to look after them, what you should be doing with them in terms of being proactive with codes rather than reactive, kind of getting in front of the audits. In my experience, I've flown, so with that, you always want to be ahead of the aeroplane before you get somewhere. You always want to have the next section of ATC or air traffic control dialed into your radio before you even get close to them. And kind of all those systems and processes are very, very important. I think are overlooked quite commonly in events, and then causes someone a lot of stress when you get closer to it that you haven't pulled it all together. So I hope this video was useful. These are just my kind of expanded thoughts on chapter 1 and questions I got from it. I will try and do as much as I can, but if you've got any questions on any of the other chapters or this particular chapter, do let me know. The Amazon hard book is now available, so you can go and order that and obviously highlight and scribble in pen and all that kind of stuff. Much appreciated. Hope this was useful, and I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.